lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and with me today, one of my favorite cartoonists. I've been wanting to do this interview for a very long time, so I'm very excited to have you, Mr. Mike Allred. I don't even need to, I mean, the list of stuff you've done, the X-Force, you've done Superman, you've done Spider-Man, you've done Madman, which is my favorite of your work. So I'm super, super excited to have you on, Mike.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So I mean, I know you probably told this story, so maybe I'm trying to figure out a way to ask it different, but I always like to kind of hear like the secret origin of like, or what started your love for comics. Maybe like the first few comics that just completely blew your socks off.
I have a lot of distinct memories about my first comics, like Silver Surfer #1 with the John Buscema issue. I remember having that and it being so precious that when I was told I couldn't bring comic books to school, I actually cut out the Silver Surfer on the cover and pasted it on my school. It was called a peachy, like a trapper keeper kind of thing. So stupid, but I needed to have that with me. I didn't think anything about the value of it by destroying it, by cutting it out. But that would be an early favorite. But the reason that I even was exposed to comic books was my older brother Lee. Always had amazing taste in comics, and when we would go on trips, or even just down to the grocery store or the drugstore, that's where the comic books would be on the rack there. I remember buying comics that were more towards kids, little kids, and Lee always got the super cool stuff. So when I blew past mine, his was always very attractive because it was deeper and richer and you could spend more time with them. And so that developed my taste early on. So Lee is completely my guru when it comes to my childhood and my exposure to comic books.
That's so cool to hear. Like, I mean, I don't know how I discovered it, but it was definitely by myself because like I was an only kid for the first 11 years. But I just remember like, the minute I picked that up, I just knew like this is my favorite thing. And I didn't really need much else in the way of anything. Like I had my toys, I had my accessories, was my comic books I spent the most time with. When or like what kind of made you decide that like that was something that was going to be your career path? When did you decide, like, when did you start drawing, and like what artists were you really gravitating towards? I know as you've gotten older, I know you've mentioned like Alex Toth and stuff like that, but what was there, and Charles Burns as well, but like who were some of the early artists that really just like stood out to you the most?
Well, obviously Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Barry Windsor Smith was huge. In fact, the first time I understood that comic books were drawn on larger paper, because as kids we would just take regular paper and fold it over and draw our comics on them. But after being exposed to Barry Smith, I actually got larger paper and tried to draw big like that. So he inspired me to try to draw a full-size comic. But I never had a real understanding of how somebody could have a career in comics. So it was never something that was a goal for me. It just seemed like, well, like like if you want to be an actor or a movie star, you go to Hollywood. Mm-hmm. But making comic books, it was clear to me that you had to go to New York, but where in New York? I didn't understand any of that. And I was a art major in college and quickly turned my major to broadcasting because I just panicked and couldn't figure out how I could make a career as an artist. And the kid across the street growing up, his dad owned the local radio stations, the AM FMs, and I had a summer job there. And so I realized maybe that's a realistic path. And so I moved into a career in broadcasting.
That's interesting because like music is definitely very prevalent in your work, the influence, whether it's in Madman or Red Rocket, or especially with your Bowie book that you did. So how did you kind of dovetail it? Like, how did you land? I think you worked with slave labor graphics, right? Was that where your first project came?
They were the first publisher to take pity on me. But I'm a pop culture junkie. It's my whole life is movies, music, and comics. And my favorite television shows as a child are still my favorite television shows. Like the Batman 66, the Adam West Batman TV series still just lights me up. I still watch it in that wide-eyed way that I did as a child. I recognize how goofy it is, but as a kid, I took it deathly seriously. When he and Robin got in those traps, I was like, it was edge of your seat kind of stuff. But I eat it up, and I love it. Just I remember the colors just bursting out, and the thrill of it, and I can still taste it whenever I watch it, and yeah, I love that stuff. But yeah, it's pop culture in general. Just I love creative things. I love certain filmmakers and artists and writers and musicians and bands. And my tastes are kind of narrow because I'll get really passionate about something, and it's rare for anything new to really enter my personal zeitgeist. And so when it does, it's very powerful. Oh, hello, say hi.
Hi.
You can never get Laura on camera, but she'll make these audio cameos.
I'm back in a minute. I'm going to the store.
Okay, be safe.
All right,
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have fun.
It's funny that you say that, because now that I'm thinking about myself, I think I do that too. Like, what I like is kind of like the lane that I stay in. I mean, yes, stuff can permeate into it, but it has to be something that's kind of extraordinary, or something that just kind of moves me, or I get that personal connection with. So, I mean, even like I mentioned, your DeLorean that you have hanging up, like that movie, the way you described the Batman animated, or the Batman Adam West show, is how I feel about Back to the Future. Like I still, like when I watch it, I feel like that little kid sitting way too close to the TV watching it over and over again. So I love that. I love that the way you described that.
When that came out, I actually worked at a movie theater. So I watched it over and over and over again. And in chunks too. Like if we'd have a break, that's the theater I would go into and watch another chunk of Back to the Future. But I have no idea how many times I've seen it now, and what particular chunks and how they add up. But yeah, I love it. It's a good time.
I've asked you about your comic book influences, but you saying like pop culture junkie, film, music, who is also kind of influential in your comic book making, in terms of, I mean, I know some of the music recs, but like directors, like what kind of stuff do you pull from those different things and interject into your art?
Oh, well, Stanley Kubrick. My dad took me to 2001 when it was re-released. So I got to see that in a theater for the first time. That blew my mind. And I was later exposed to everything else he did. Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, The Shining. I actually auditioned for Full Metal Jacket. I was an aspiring actor
Oh,
out of
crazy.
college. I played Dracula in college, and they threw a wide net for. They wanted fresh faces. They wanted, new actors, and so I met that criteria. Obviously, I didn't get the part, but I did read the book Short Timers to prepare, and it led me to other things. But David Lynch is huge. His work just takes you to a dream place that's so unique to him, and it's the kind of stuff you can watch over and over again. My all-time favorite movie is A Hard Day's Night, which was directed by Richard Lester, and a lot of his movies I really like. He did The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers, which were excellent. I love Help, which is the Beatles in a James Bond movie. So I'll have these favorites, lifelong favorites, and somebody new will pop in. In this case, with movies, I would say Wes Anderson. He's somebody that a filmmaker I've become very passionate about, and that, and how rare for somebody to be as unique as he is, to find this niche and and be comfortable in it, to where you know that you're going to watch 5 minutes of it, you know you're watching a Wes Anderson movie, but they're all different. They're all so different. They all have their own stamp on them, even though they're clearly Wes Anderson films. So I love stuff like that. Well, I should grab one of my movie books to just talk about all the movies I love. No secret, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and the first Star Wars movie remains the greatest experience I ever had in movie theater. It just blew my mind like nothing else ever before or since, and it remains my favorite of all the Star Wars anything. My second favorite Star Wars anything would be The Mandalorian, which you have, for me, that first trilogy and then The Mandalorian, it brought back that childhood love of Star Wars like nothing has since Return of the Jedi. And it well, I actually, where is it? Yeah, I made a man. I don't know if you can see it back there, but in a moment's notice, I can put that on, or this Batman outfit that I put on. So I can fight crime in downtown Eugene, Oregon. Yeah, so that I really eat that stuff up. Oh, and in The Mandalorian, the last episode of the second season, assuming a lot of people who are listening to us will be familiar with this, when all of a sudden you see the X-wing, and you think, oh, who's that going to be? And then you see this figure in a dark cloak just cutting through all the battle droids, and not battle droids, but dark troopers. And when you see it's Luke Skywalker, I mean, tears just it moved me so much. It was incredible. And it's rare for something like that anymore, where something can just really tap into the core of who you are as a person, and the things that you care about, and the pop culture that moves you. So that was really powerful. And just recently we heard that Jon Favreau is writing and directing a feature film of that. So for me personally, crazy excited. I think that is something that they should definitely, it's a smart move.
I'm right there with you. I jumped off of my couch when I saw Luke come and just start going through them. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And then my wife's like, what are you doing? I was like, that's Luke. He's in the show, dude. Like, I was so stoked. And I think it is, like, I wholeheartedly agree, like that original trilogy, and then bringing the Mandalorian to be able to recapture that same feeling I got, because I didn't see it in the movie theater, but I saw it, like, I did see the original cuts before they remastered it when I was a little kid. And I just remember just like being, again, just like so enamored with those movies. And it's been hard to be as excited about Star Wars stuff until Mandalorian dropped. I mean, it was just brilliant.
Now, I have to apologize. First of all, please feel free to interrupt me at any point, but I know that I'll be asked a question and I will just veer off in all kinds of directions. So please feel free to pull me back if I don't answer the question you asked.
No, I love conversations like this. I think these are the best ones where they go off into different areas, like, and I'm having a blast talking with you so far. So
this is what Laura deals with on a daily basis, where she can ask me about something and all of a sudden it's about something else entirely. But yeah, that's just how my brain works. It's in circles and swirls.
I'm the same way, man. So I totally get it. I do want to talk, like, you got your break at Slave Labor Graphics. You created Madman shortly after that. What was the, like, because I haven't heard the story. So, like, what was the genesis of the creation of the character that you have become so, like, I mean, that's what you're known for.
I'll tell the short version in case somebody is bored to tears of me saying this over and over again. But Slave Labor did Dead Air, which was my first book. It was a graphic novel. In like a 3-year period, I went from just wanting one thing published to realizing that until I was satisfied, I couldn't stop. And that's where I'm still at decades later, where I just want to constantly improve and figure out exactly what a perfect comic book for me is. And from Dead Air to graphic music, I created the character Frank Einstein. and didn't realize it at the time, but it finally was an epiphany where I realized that Frank Einstein was my vessel. He was me. He was who I put all of my, or most of my deepest feelings and thoughts into my comics. And with that, he became my favorite character. So when my kids were going to school and telling their friends what their dad did, I didn't feel comfortable showing them what I was working on, because graphic music were not appropriate for children.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I found a new goal to make the kind of comics that I loved when I was a kid. It wasn't a compromise. It was a realization that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to tap into that joy that I had as a child, and to have something that I could happily show my kids and have them share with their friends, and also satisfy me as an adult. So to have these wonderful adventures with robots and aliens and superheroes and costumed adventurers and underground rocket car tunnels. I wanted that my Madman universe to be a place where anything could happen. And I have this surface level fun, like Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, but also have adult themes and feelings and thoughts and existential concerns that I am confronted with and can't stop thinking about. And so that's what it became. And with that, I had my first major success. And Kevin Eastman, who co-created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, had a company at the time called Tundra,
Mm-hmm.
and could not have been more supportive. And they released the first Madman series. It was a 3-issue. They were each 48-page square-bound books. It was a 2-color book. They didn't spring for full color at that time. I was still kind of an unknown entity, but they really just made it this super classy thing. And to make it even more special, I decided to do flip action corners.
I love that about those issues.
Good. Yeah. And I've done a more elaborate one recently, which is collected in one of these new Dark Horse Madman library books, oversized. It was seen small in a IDW special anniversary collection, but in there, it's actually the Red Rocket 7 edition, which, because it was square format, had a third of the page open to blow up this new flip action sequence that I came up with. But anyway, they just could not have been more supportive. Ann Egan, the marketing director, turned Alan Moore onto my stuff. So right out of the gate, got this wonderful blurb from Alan Moore. And that's kind of been my career, just luck, just a lot of luck, right people, right place, being exposed to the right people who in turn are supportive and open new doors for me. And I'm just grateful that has happened for us, because this is something we're very passionate about and never want to stop doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the first time I discovered your art. I know I was young, so probably I'm gonna say it was probably in Wizard magazine, was probably where I first saw your stuff. And then I know that I remember seeing the booklet and the DVD for Chasing Amy with your art on it, because I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. And I was like, I know that art. What do I know it from? Because at that point I was young, and like I couldn't remember where I'd seen it before. But then picking up Madman, just absorbing everything you've done since then. Just like, it's kind of like how you described when you watch like the Batman show, right? Like your art just brings like a pure joy, because like you can feel the joy of comic books coming through each page that you draw. And then you pair that with Laura's colors. I mean, it's a feast for the eyes, man,
I'm so fortunate. She's so wonderfully talented, and she's my everything. The day I met her, I won life. And I can't believe she's still with me. But we're talking about right place, right time. We were at San Diego Comic-Con and just, walking down the aisles. I'm a big fan of independent film. Like Robert Rodriguez is somebody I've worked a lot with. And so I was very familiar with Clerks because they came out around the same time. And Robert, Kevin Smith, and Tarantino, they all just kind of came out at the same time, all exploded out of Sundance and whatnot. And I was tapped into that stuff. So when I saw Kevin Smith at San Diego just walking down the aisle, like everybody else, this was before people largely knew who he was. He wasn't the recognizable icon that he is now, but I recognized him. And he was with his producer, Scott Mosier. And I guess he recognized me because we kind of just locked and walked towards each other, and we're each doing this like Spider-Man. I know you. And we just started having a conversation, and he and Scott started talking about their next movie, Mallrats, and that they had an opening title sequence that they wanted to do with fake comic book covers for the credits, and asked me if I would do one. So I did, and I was assigned a London character, but also I also included Jay and Silent Bob, and with them fighting a giant robot, part of what I like to do. So anyway, that happened, and then shortly after, they were moving into trying to decide what their next movie would be, and it was either going to be Chasing Amy or Dogma. And Kevin sent me the scripts to both, wanting to know my opinion of them, and loved them both. But Dogma was just rich with genre, with angels, and it just felt so epic. And I remember asking him, "So you're going big budget now, then, right? This looks huge." And he says, "Well, that's probably why Chasing Amy will be my third film, is that I can do it small. And would you help me out with that?" And they asked me to do all of the art that Ben Affleck and Jason Lee do in the movie. So anything you see them drawing, that's my work. And then he also asked me to design the Bluntman and Chronic characters, which I happily did. And then beyond that, showing you the kind of guy Kevin is, made sure we were there for the shoot at the fake comic book convention that opens the movie. And I have the first line in the movie where I'm talking to Ethan Suplee. And then after I have my line, it cuts to Ben Affleck holding a Madman comic. So if you want to know if I love Kevin Smith and the Askewiverse, then yes, I do. Been so great. And then when Dogma happened, he made sure I was in Pittsburgh to be a part of that. And and with Robert Rodriguez, always finding something for me to do with him too. Like in the faculty, I designed the school logo, a mascot. And in Spy Kids 2, there was this big gathering of Spy Kids, and all of his friends who had children, he flew in to be part of that scene. So Laura and I, with our daughter Kelby, were flown in to Austin, and it was so thrilling. Our little girl had a makeup artist, and they had outfits for her to choose. And we shared a trailer with Cheech of Cheech and Chong fame.
That's
and
awesome.
In fact, came in from the airport at the same time together. And we were with Mike Judge and Richard Linklater, all of these guys who had kids. And Mike Judge actually has a speaking part of the movie. But you'll see us in there, and we're parents to a Spy Kid. But that's the kind of guy that these guys are. Tarantino, who will wear Madman shirts like you're representing right now.
That's right.
But he had, and coincidentally, I've got a Racing Stripe shirt on now, and I have a Racing Stripe Madman shirt, and a picture of Tarantino wearing my Madman Racing Stripe shirt was in an issue of Time magazine. Was actually the Person of the Year issue, so it was one of these bigger issues, and there's QT wearing a Madman shirt. Just that these wonderful, nifty little moments just keep popping up in our lives, and I can never take it for granted that this is what's so fun about the pop culture and creative individuals. There's always something to be excited about, something to nerd out about, something to throw your fandom at. I am a fan, and if anybody ever enjoys my work, I am just infinitely grateful. I will never ever take that for granted. It's what allows me to do what I love to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just like I literally just finished the 4th library edition, like rereading that, and I still need to get the 5th one, but I was reading that and it's just like some of those issues, man, like there's a reason people connect with your work. And I think that like you mix, a lot of the fantastical elements, but it feels like there's so much of you in there as well. Like how much of that is or organically just kind of comes out when you're writing and drawing, or how much of that is like conscious that you're doing it when you're writing your stuff?
Well, writing 101 is write what you know. And if there's anything I know, it's giant robots, rocket car tunnels, aliens, and costumed adventurers. Now, it is very organic. I have very vivid dreams, and it's amazing to me that you can dream and clearly see faces and places that don't exist in the real world. How is that possible? I work through the night, so I'm usually up by noon, which was shortly before we started here.
Mhm.
So I have a very vivid dream that's just very clear and recent in my mind. And I had like a shuttle vehicle that could fly around with a joystick, and I'm clearly flying this thing. I can clearly see the interior of it, and I take it out uh, out of out into space and just kind of let loose. I'm floating around in this thing, and then I go back to Earth, and there's this very real, detailed mansion slash castle on the top of a hill on a cliff, and I'm flying around it, and I'm seeing the detail of the architecture, and the front is really fancy, and I see that people are coming up to it like it's a tourist attraction. And when I fly around the back, it's garbage. Like they put all the effort into making the front look nice and polished, but the back is kind of messed up. And then it kind of starts to, I have a hard time keeping it aloft anymore. And I end up down in this field, these 3 airplanes with their wings touching fly over. And then another one comes down and lands in this field in front of me. A guy comes up with a gun and starts tapping on the gun, telling me to get out. I'm like, I'm not going to get out. So now since I can't get off the ground, I'm just kind of scooting this thing around, trying to get away from this guy. And then I wake up. But that it's these dreams that filter into my comics. Red Rocket 7, the entire Red Rocket 7 project, which I did a feature film called Astroesque. My band, The Gear, did an album which works as a soundtrack for the entire project. And then Red Rocket 7, the 7-issue series, which, because it's the history of rock and roll told through the eyes of an alien clone, I had it shaped like a record album square. And that all came from a dream. It was one of these dreams that made me think of this rocket crash landing and the alien cloning himself in order to his entity to survive. But that's, so yes, it's very organic. How's that for an answer to your question?
That's dope. I love hearing that kind of stuff. That's crazy. I mean, I have dreams, but like the way you just described yours was like, I don't even think I could describe my dream that like that vividly. That's crazy.
I have flying dreams, and they're so real. Like not in a, this was in a spaceship. It kind of looked like a Hummer, about the size of a Hummer. It was a small thing. And again, the detail of it. But I also have dreams where I'm flying and going up high and swooping down. It feels so real. How is that possible? How is this so realistic in this dream world? It makes my mind to be open to the possibilities of, you know, other kinds of existence that we tap into in our dreams. Otherwise, I don't understand how we can see in great detail places and people that we've never seen before, or at least have no memory of. But like this castle mansion structure, if it exists on this planet, I've never seen it. I have no memory of it, but in my dream, it could not have been more realistic. And in this vehicle I'm flying, I could feel the joystick. I could feel the controls. When I wake up, I'm like, okay, was that the real world, or is this fake now? Is this the dream? You know, I really get lost in that kind of stuff. And so I think I have the perfect profession to deal with
Yes.
this kind of mental illness.
I wouldn't call it mental illness. I call it just, I mean, creativity. I mean, you're creative even when you're dreaming. Like, that's pretty intense, you know? Something I really love about your work too is like how you kind of experiment with different art styles like throughout your career, different formats, or the way you're drawing the book, whether it's like a continuous image going throughout, you know, the flip book and stuff. And one of the issues that really stood out to me when like you know, Frank's going through this existential crisis and you do all these different styles emulating other comic book artists. That just blew my mind. I read it last night, so it's very fresh in my mind, but I just love that so much. Like, how much fun is it doing that? And I couldn't pick out every single one. So I'm kind of curious the choices you made in terms of who you wanted to put in there.
Well, I loved doing it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. Also, one of the most challenging things I've ever done, where I did my best to find out what tools the artists would use that I was trying to emulate. L. Hirschfeld, for instance, would use a specific kind of nib pen. So I ordered it from the art supply store to try to get that same line. Unfortunately, a lot of the artists I'm trying to draw like in that book, I don't know what their inking tools were, and so it actually Cartoonist Kayfabe has an episode where they go through panel by panel through that, and they're trying to guess who the different artists are. And you know, Ed or Jim at times will go, "Yeah, he kind of dropped the ball here because this artist uses this kind of thing." So they knew what kind of inking tool, or that I wasn't capturing the line as good as I could have, should have. And that was fun to see somebody go through it like that. But for me personally, it was a love letter for the history of not just comic books, because there's artists that influenced me as a child, like Maurice Sendak, or Hank Ketchum, who did Dennis the Menace, or Charles Adams and his spooky. There's a Charles Schultz in there, Dr. Seuss. So, and then animated stuff, Warner Brothers animation, Looney Tunes, Disney cartoons, all of these artists that influenced me throughout my life are represented in that one issue. And it's one of the few comic books of mine that I ordered ordered more, that I wanted extras, so that I would have a nice stack to hopefully last me through the rest of my life, where I can give it out whenever possible, when like people come over to the house or whatever. But it's one of my favorite things I've ever done. Also up there, what I similarly was the Silver Surfer number 11, which we won the best issue Eisner for, Dan Slott and Laura, and where we did a time loop thing through the if you look at the comic, you follow. I drew the panels so they have a slight arrow shape, so you know which direction to go, and you actually then have to turn the comic book upside down to then go back, and they're stuck in this time loop until you fold one of the last pages over for Surfer to break out. And so proud of that I just ordered a whole bunch of extra copies so that I always have one on hand. But that's the joy of doing this stuff, where every once in a while you'll do something that you just pushed out of your boundaries a little bit, and it's exciting, and it encourages you and fuels you up to continue on with your next.
Yeah, both of those issues are phenomenal. I need to get those in single issues, especially because Silver Surfer doing that with the omnibus is not an easy feat. You know, it'd be a lot easier to single issue, so I definitely gonna have to pick that one up for sure.
It's that you want the physical comic.
Have you done it? Is there any experimentation with art that maybe you did but never saw the light, like that you had to kind of scrap?
Constantly. Madman Atomic Comics, the Image series, every single issue I tried something new, either a storytelling technique or an artistic technique as far as tools or printing. And it was along these lines that Laura and I developed a process that I haven't heard of anybody else doing it. I have the benefit of having my colorist live with me. And so one of the things that we found that really works nicely for us is for me to, after I ink the line art of a page, Laura will take it and scan it, give it back to me. And then on the artboard, I will then do washes, gray washes or graphite tones, and can create textures. And this is where I can control the modeling, where I determine, you know, where a shadow falls on a nose or under a chin or behind a figure, or to round out a vehicle, you know, with graphite and smudge it around, and then give the page back to Laura. She scans it again, and then she separately has all of these tones separate from the line art, but she can take that and turn those tones into any color. So where on the original art it's gray, she can turn that gray into any color and yet still maintain the integrity of the original line art, which then she of course can also turn into color if she wants to. And it's the perfect collaboration where I'm able to control again the modeling of the art, and yet she's able to make it sing with her skills. And that all came from experimentation, and we're always finding nifty little things like that. There's things that I've done in the past, like working on Coquille board, that I want to play with again. And there's storytelling techniques that I'll see in a film and will want to utilize. So it's like we're talking about filmmakers being influential, like Kubrick and Wes Anderson will use these very symmetrical shots. And it's fun to kind of like line something up like that and then skew it. So there are different things you can do in storytelling where you can lock somebody in, establish somebody, make it clear where they are, and then you can pull them in other directions because you've established clearly where you are. Because the most important part of storytelling, any storytelling, is establishing clarity. You can, once you've established clarity, or if it's character driven, once you've established the characters, then you can go off in all kinds of crazy directions and pull people along with you. If you kind of throw them into a mess, they can never integrate into the story. So it's ways that you can pull here and there with storytelling. These are things that I'm always looking at and playing with and trying to you know, really get into lock people in so that their heads are in the game, but then see how we can work them around and pull them around through the story.
Yeah, dude, that's what I love about that run of the Image stuff, is it's so, each issue is so different than the last. Like there's something that you tweak it every single time. Like I said, the one with that, there's the one where they're fighting like that. It's like a worm type thing with like the big mouth, and they're going through, and you have like all these different locations. Like there's like Jane Silent Bob's Secret Stash you threw in there, and you threw all the different locations. I love that one too. That one was a blast to read.
That's the world's biggest comic book panel. And if you go to AAApop.com, you can see it in one piece. You can scroll across it. So it's like one incredibly long tracking shot is what it amounts to. If you have the actual comic book, it's divided into double page spreads. Mm-hmm. I laid it all out so that they all connected, so that all of the art was, I didn't have one giant roll of paper,
Mhm.
but on the website you can see it. It's really tiny. You click on it, blow it up, and then you can just move past it. And and then you see the comic shop and everything on there. But yeah, that was issue number 9 of Madman Atomic Comics. And then also there was a silent issue where there was no dialogue in it at all. And
Mhm.
Frank and Joe get married, but Joe has been survives by being absorbed into It Girl's body, and that created some that provoked thoughts.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting thing that happened with Joe. I really dug that part of the book as well. It's interesting because you've gone through so many different publishers with Madman, but like you own it, so you can do whatever you want, go wherever you want with the character. Um, are you still doing the self-publishing with it, or because I know like Dark Horse is doing the library editions, so is like what's the status with Madman as of right now?
Well, probably it would be, it's hard to say. Um, Probably, I never really, well, it's really hard to say. I mean, I love Image and I love Dark Horse. And so I've been doing these beautiful collections with Dark Horse, but then the last book that came out was with Image, and I've got no problem with Image. So it'd be a tough call to what the next, if it was, and also I don't know if the next Madman. I have an outline that is, here's where my brain starts going foo foo. I have an outline. I will never live long enough to tell all the Madman stories that I'm wanting to tell, and especially when I work so much with collaborations, and those take precedent because of consideration with other people's schedules. I can't go, oh well, I'm not going to finish this thing we're doing together because I got to do my thing. No, I have to make mine a spare time project, and spare time is hard to find. But this next story is so huge, I might do it as a graphic novel, in which case it might make more sense for Dark Horse to publish that, since we've established these larger books with them.
Mhm.
With Image, it's a lot easier to do single comics, and with Image, it's the next best thing to self-publishing. It is self-publishing because with Image, you have advantage of their team,
Mhm.
their established group that can get a book together and get it to the printer. And because they're working with all these other artists, your printing costs are less, but you're making all of the decisions, what kind of paper you're going to use, everything. It is this close to self-publishing, but it's with Image. And that's awesome. That's how it was described to me by Eric Larson when he was telling me, I think we were in a conversation, and our company, AAA Pop, was enjoyable, but to publish and write and draw and do everything else is a lot to take on. And Eric was saying, well, we'll do all of this other stuff for you. And I thought, well, I'll give that a go. And that's why I had the luxury to really go nuts with the experimenting with the storytelling and the artwork, because I wasn't worried about all the busy work
Yeah.
we did when we were self-publishing. So with that, I really like that. And everybody's in Oregon now. So
Yep.
Dark Horse and Image, I can actually go and talk to these people face to face, which is such a advantage. So yeah, I don't know. That's a ways off, but with the Dark Horse collections, they're so perfect. They're everything that I would want in a collection. And yeah, there's 6 that collect all of my creator-owned work, and the 6th one is about to go to press. I saw you did an interview with one of Frank Frazetta's granddaughters recently.
Yeah, I've interviewed her. I think she's been on 4 times on the
Huh.
channel. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because of that, you know, I think it's, rather than just talking heads, I try to do a little show and tell when I do these things, and so I try to.
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
Can you see that okay, or is there a glare on it?
That's good like that. That's insane.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was a major coup, and that was because of Frank Miller. Frank Miller introduced me to Frank Frazetta, and then my biggest creation is Frank Einstein. So Frank.
I love it, man. That's awesome. I mean, I can't even, I've never even seen an original Frazetta piece in person. So,
Well,
man.
this was crazy. We were at a show, and Frank Frazetta was there, and I was with Frank Miller, and Frank was like, "Oh, you got to meet Mike Allred." And then I was like, "Oh, you know, it'd be so great if you could do a piece for me." And Frank Miller jumped in and said, "I did one, Frank. You should do one too." So Frank Frazetta was like, "Yeah, okay." Gave me his phone number, and said, "I'll have it for you next week." And so I call, and he says, "Oh, hang on a second. You need to talk to Ellie." And I'd heard that she is a tough customer. And so, like, why do I have to talk to her? And she gets on the phone and says, well, Frank really loved drawing your character. In fact, he loved it so much that he went ahead and inked it. Now, the original deal, when he told me he was going to do it, he says, "I don't ink anymore. So it'll be a very detailed pencil drawing." And I was, anything, that'd be great. So on the one hand, she's telling me this, I'm thinking, well, that's fantastic. He went ahead and he inked it. And then she says, "So we're gonna have to charge you more." And it was, to this day, it's the most money I've ever spent on original art. And when I had to go, Laura's the person that manages the money, and so I went to my Ellie, and Laura didn't even blink. She was like, I know how important this is to you. I love Rosetta's work too. Let's do it." And so we own a Madman Frank Frazetta, a Frank Frazetta Madman.
So sick. That's awesome, man. I love that story. I'm a huge Frazetta fan, so I love getting to hear anything about him.
Yeah, he, like, his comics are. I've got the comic art of Frank Frazetta right in front of me, right over there. It's always within reach. As much as I love his paintings, it's his comics that inspire me the most, and the line that he uses, and like, he and Dave Stevens probably have the most beautiful line art ever. And there's so many artists that I admire, and the line art that they use, but there's something so lush and perfect about what those guys did, and that's what I aspire to.
Yeah, Dave Stevens too. I mean, I had the Taschen book, the Frazetta book that came out, I think it was last year, that's just so beautiful. And then the artist edition for Rocketeer with Dave Stevens is another one.
Oh,
Amazing.
I got to go to his house and
Oh
look
my
through
God.
every page of it. Laura grew up 4 miles from Disneyland, and there was a comic shop called Fredonia Funny Works there, owned by John Koukasakis. And so when I was getting into comics, and we would be down visiting Laura's parents, that's the comic shop I would go to, and we became very good friends with Kook. And he's best buddies with Dave Stevens, tight with the Hernandez brothers. So all these artists that I'm crazy about, I'm getting to talk to John about all the time. Like, "Oh, you know these guys?" And I got my self-published Love and Rockets #1 from him. Before Fantagraphics picked it up. That's one of my treasures. They're hugely important in inspiring me. But yeah, and so then you start going to shows, and Kook is there, and then all of a sudden you're rubbing shoulders with these other guys too. And at one point, Dave was like, "Hey, I'm going to go antique shopping. Want to come?" And so end up hooking up with John and Dave Stevens. We started his house, and he brings out this box and he goes, "You might want to see this." Opens the box and it's every page of The Rocketeer. And should I wear gloves? That's fine. And I got to just go through every single page, and they it doesn't look like a human being touched these things. They're so perfect and beautiful. And of course, he worked with a lot of other artists who, in the breakdowns and stuff, like Jaime Hernandez and Art Adams. These guys actually did some penciling and stuff on these pages. But when Dave comes in with that brush and the ink, it's just lush and gorgeous. But then we went running around to these different antique stores, and he would find these old calendars with pinup girls on them and stuff. And I bought one that had a George Petty, super cute girl in a bunny costume, with ears and like a onesie, and it's super cute. And I have plexiglass over my drawing board, and so I can constantly switch the stuff that's underneath it. And so if this illustration inspires me, I'll switch it up and put it in there. And that George Petty piece is constantly finding its turn under the plexi.
Well, speaking of, artist editions, is that something that you ever thought of getting done with your work? I mean, I think the demand for a Mike Allred artist edition would be pretty high.
What would it be? What would we put in it? I don't know. Also, I don't have a lot of that stuff anymore, so I don't know how they gather that stuff. I've never given it much serious thought, and I started keeping all of my stories. So back in the day, you'd make ends meet by selling the original art, and at one point we realized we don't have to sell it. We're doing all right. We don't need this. We don't need the money. So do we want to keep selling it? And we decided, well, we'll only sell complete books, and only at a price that we'd be willing to let go of it, because our kids wanted it. And Laura thought it would be smart to keep this as a kind of legacy for the kids. Mm-hmm. And so we started keeping complete books. And then from time to time, we'll sell a book or so you don't see a lot of my newer pages out there at all. And every once in a while, I might break something up, and forget why did
because I was asking about
artist editions. So a newer book would be easy to make an artist edition of, because I've been keeping all of the pages. But older stuff, which might be more significant as far as because the artist editions tend to be the stuff that kind of started an artist or was significant to the genesis of an artist's career. So I don't know what that might be. Maybe like the but also a weird thing, the world's biggest comic book panel. Okay. The book that I would definitely want to see an artist edition would be the one where I'm paying homage to these other artists, but then it becomes less of an artist edition of my work, because I'm trying to draw like other artists. So yeah, I don't know what it would be. And then the earlier stuff isn't stuff that I would want to see blown up all big, like the first Madman series. As important as they are to me, it's not, the art isn't something that I'd want to show off. So I struggle with it. I would really need a consensus and be convinced into what should go into an artist edition. But I'd be curious to know what people would like to see blown up into a big fancy hardcover book.
I might have to start a poll, because I want to see that. I want to see that book come into existence. I love seeing, like, I can't afford original art.
That stuff is priceless. It's this close to owning the original art.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do it right, it's priceless.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be able to see your stuff at the original size would just be amazing, you know?
I have we were talking about Barry Smith, and Red Nails, a Conan story that he did, is one of my favorite comic book stories ever. And somebody who had access to the original art did it wasn't an IDW artist edition, it was somebody else who did it. And it was really happy to have it. I have it, I love it, but also hugely disappointing because they printed it on glossy paper, and they also did a black border around everything rather than having it bleed off. So when you go through an artist edition, it's almost like you're turning the pages of a piece of original art.
Mm-hmm.
In this Nails thing, it's wasted space. The black around it they could have made the pages that much bigger, bleeding it out. I don't know why they did the black, and I don't know why they put it on glossy paper rather than the matte paper, which feels more like bristle board. So if anybody has access to that and is looking to reprint it, please do it right, because I love that story so much.
Yeah, I'm a fan of matte paper. I prefer it over the super glossy. Even in like the single issue sometimes, you know. So
For an artist edition,
yeah,
why?
it has to be matte.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some of your more current stuff that you've been working on. You finished Superman the Space Age, you did it with Mark Russell. Now you're doing a follow-up. Doing a Batman book.
Yeah, so here show and tell. Show everybody for the class. Can you see it in the back? Superman Space Age with Mark Russell, fellow Oregonian, comes over to our house quite a bit. And in fact, he gave me this shirt. Thanks, Mark. Him and his wife, Amy. And yeah, so the next one is Batman Dark Age. So we get a same exact format ultimately for the collection, but instead of 3 80-page issues, it's 6 40-page issues, which means I get to do 3 more covers than I would have otherwise. But it's my Batman. So I was Adam West cover artist for Batman 66, did all of those, and then a couple of stories too which my brother Lee wrote. But my Batman, the non-66 Batman, is this floppy-eared dude. So this would be an example of my Batman. But also, as you saw Batman and Superman Space Age, our Batman is constantly tweaking things. He's constantly, so there are changes like, well, this will work better or this will work better. So there's subtle changes. When you first see the bat suit, it's more of a armor kind of thing. He becomes more slicker. One point you see him wearing like some kind of armament or padding underneath the suit before he puts the actual top part of the suit on, things like that. So we get to play with it because we're going through time and tweaking things constantly. But in general, this is my definitive Batman. So usually when you see mine, like there was the statue line, the Batman black and white statues, that's my Batman. That's my design. I have him throwing a batarang. Google it, kids. And then we are, hopefully we got a trilogy going on, and I won't tell you who will star in the third one, but we're hoping that'll happen. But in the meantime, working on Batman Dark Age and having a blast.
Yeah, I loved Superman the Space Age, getting to see some of the characters depicted by you that I don't think I'd seen before. I definitely think it was the first time for seeing some of them depicted by you. So what's different about this one? Because like that's had its own flavor. Is this within that same universe? Like, is it all connected? Or is this kind of just in that vein where it's like a similar tone, but not directly connected?
I don't think I should say.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
There are a lot of great surprises, and Mark is constantly surprising me with his ideas. Brilliant guy. And I get excited every time I get a script, and then I'm given free rein to throw my madness into it. And everybody, our editor Brittany is fantastic. Everyone's been very receptive to how I spin this stuff. So it's a perfect collaboration.
Awesome. Well, I am excited for everything you got going on. Is there anything else that you're working on that you can kind of tease or talk about before I let you go?
I'll tease the next music graphic novel that I'm doing. I'm doing this with one of my best buds, Ben Saunders, Professor Benjamin Saunders. He's done a lot of, he did these Penguin Marvel books, where each of these hardcover volumes, I'm looking at them: Captain America, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, and he curates original art for museums at the museum at the University of Oregon where he works. He's a professor of English, but he also teaches the history of comics, and he's from Wales, so he has this very lush accent. And so when he's talking about comic books, makes you think that they're a very prestigious art form. But he did an exhibit on the history of superheroes. He did a EC Comics exhibit, talking about Frazetta, having original Frazettas in front of us. Like, we get to saw this stuff before it got framed and put up. And EC Artists was like one of the greatest collection. EC Comics had one of the greatest collection of artists and storytellers in any medium. Like, wow. So that was a thrill. He did a Charles Schultz Peanuts exhibit, so original Peanut strips were there. And he's curated this Marvel Comics exhibit, which is traveling around the world. Started in Seattle and has moved from city to city, and now I think it's going to Europe now. But that's Ben. And so this music project, it's a labor of love for the both of us. We're very passionate about this subject. Can't say who it is yet, but I've hand lettered it the way that I hand lettered the Bowie book. So I'm able to completely control the composition of every panel, no wasted space. And it is a third of the way done, completely done, colored in every. So again, one of these spare time projects, but that is something that I'm excited for folks to see, and will be in the exact format as the Bowie book. One thing I'm crazy excited about is the Original Art Expo that's happening in Orlando starting the 26th of this month. This is a first of its kind event which focuses on the artists and the artwork, and the guest list is insane. Just look it up. If you can put a link to it.
I'll drop a link.
When you see this guest list, it's incredible. And it might be too late for most of the artists to do commissions, but a lot of the opportunities was to do commissions and meet and greets where it's only you with your favorite artists, them giving you this artwork and being able to talk about it and stuff. But even if you don't do the commissions, go there. We're all going to be there having fun. It's in America's Playground. It's across the street from Universal Studios, just a knife's throw away from Disney World. And it just sounds really thrilling. And I hope it's hugely successful, because I want more shows like this where you can really get more of a face-to-face opportunity with your favorite artists.
Yeah,
Expo.
Yeah, so definitely go check that out, and I will drop the link down below.
Great.
Hell yeah, man. I'm super excited, and I can't wait for the Batman book. I can't wait for the more Madman stuff. I can't wait to pick up the last 2 library editions, which 5 is the only one that's out that I'm missing. So 6, knowing I got some time before 6 comes out. So very excited for everything, and I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit and talk some comics with me.
Thank you for having any interest in anything I do. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, I hopefully you're down to do this again sometime in the future, because I would love to chat with you again.
Well, I struggle with the technology, but I'm getting better. And so, because I enjoy it, once we're up and running, this can be a very isolating lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly in a whole other world in my head with, what I'm playing with in front of me. And then, other than friends and family, we do a family Friday where we'll have friends and family over, and we'll play pinball. We'll have a meal. We'll do karaoke. I've got a karaoke stage in my studio, and if it wasn't for that social interaction, so I'm getting better at coming out of my personal bat cave. And once it's up and running, I really enjoy talking about all of this stuff, you know, pop culture in general, and happy to share what we're working on, and talking to people like you who enjoy the same things that people like me enjoy. It's a kick, and I want to do it more. If I can just get up and running and better at how to figure out all this other stuff, then I'm always happy to return.
Awesome, man. Well, you take care, and we'll do this again sometime.
Okay, great.